Every single person I've gotten the chance to work with, it's been an honor and a blessing. Chris is one that's super, super special to me, just with my love of the sport, and being able to influence that was really big. Leading into that final Olympia, and in my opinion, he brought his best physique, which of course, like, I'm such a tiny piece of all the things that I do, but it was really cool that your back was brought up and your arms were brought up and you didn't have any injuries. In the thought process of him retiring, it became like, okay, what's next? Why is it that someone would be more interested in, I'm gonna order some liver pills and like, that's how I'm gonna get shredded, and it feels easier than just being like, I have to get rid of my Lay's in the pantry. Oh, now I have to take more time to prep my food. But often the best things in life are on the other side of a little bit of difficulty.
What are your thoughts on miracle weight loss drugs, right? Like Ozempic. Welcome back to another episode of the Austin Zaback Show. Today we have Justin King on the podcast. Now, a lot of you guys have probably heard of him, you've seen him, or maybe you've seen some of the people that he's trained. So Justin has actually been in the fitness industry for a very long time, nearly a decade, and has consistently been one of the leading producers in the highest quality level of results. He's achieved this with clientele really ranging from the best professional athletes, 16 different professional sports, to top executives and bodybuilders. And we're going to talk about it on the show. One of the guys that probably a lot of people know that you've trained is CBUM. Huge name, obviously. I can actually relate to CBUM because I have a lisp just like CBUM does. But really, really cool to see what you've accomplished, man. And I'm excited to kind of dive into, I feel like fitness in general is a really popular topic right now, right? And you see everybody on social media talking about, how to get shredded, how to get jacked, whatever the case might be, all the way to, I was going to talk to you at the end of the podcast. We'll talk about the body positivity movement, right? And so that's obviously kind of on the other end of the spectrum that we have and we're seeing going on right now. But I appreciate you being on the show, and let's dive into it.
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me. I'm honored, and I appreciate the kind words and the awesome introduction.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it, man.
Of course, dude. So before we dive in, maybe you can tell me a little bit about how you got into this industry. Like, was it something where you grew up and you were just super passionate about weightlifting, bodybuilding, that type of thing, and then you eventually made it your full-time career? Or how did that kind of play out?
Yeah. So I've always been in fitness in some aspect. It was always sports growing up. I think it was around like 12. My father-in-law at the time had gotten a little weight set, and it was like, oh my gosh, like I can do something that can influence my body and my performance. And I'm so obsessive. Anything, like maybe I was obsessive with like a car set when I was a kid, and then it turned into the dumbbell set, and then it turned into the business and the results with pro athletes. And so it was always kind of the same thing. Wanted to get jacked when I was 12, then I wanted to get abs when I was 16 for my girlfriend and now wife at the time, or not at the time, my wife now.
Sure.
We're still married. Yeah, man. And honestly, it's just been a continual obsession with trying to figure out how I can get deeper into it, get better results. I'm sure you found this in the real estate industry. With the fitness industry, there's kind of like a superficial level of this is what most people understand, and this is the result that most people are limited to.
Sure.
But there's so much more beneath the surface, and I've become obsessed with finding out what those things are.
Right.
And so just getting in with people who have done it better than anyone else, and investing and learning from them and trying to figure out like what are their secrets, what are their things. And that's been the last decade, is me just diving deep with those guys.
That's crazy, dude. Let's talk a little bit about that, right? Like what is, or what would you say that baseline level of understanding is in the fitness world? Like when you talk about, people kind of have this baseline mentality of what they can achieve and what they end up achieving versus, going deep into the layers of what you do. So what is that baseline? Is it just like the macro game and tracking your macros and lifting 5 times a week? Like, is that what you're kind of referring to?
No, 100%. I think the average gym bro, gym gal, whoever it is, they understand you've got to put a certain amount of protein, carbs, fat into your body. You need to expend more energy than what you're taking in. And they're worried about just going in and lifting weights, right? They see something on Instagram. Okay, that person looks good. I'm going to emulate whatever they're doing, and I'm going to hope that I get the same results.
Sure.
Of course, most people do not look like Chris Bumstead. So like there is a discrepancy, whether it's genetically or they're not doing the same protocols or they're missing something that's further below the surface. But yeah, most people stop there, which is fine. Like not everyone needs to be incredibly passionate about how they can get the extra 2% result or the extra 30% result. Like for most people, just going into the gym, finding something that they enjoy, whether it's yoga, cycling, lifting weights, whatever it is, like that's perfectly fine.
Sure.
The way that I look at things, we're gifted with one body in our lifetime. It's a temple. We're called to take care of it, and it's the vessel that we do everything through. So whether you're a business owner, whether you're a mom or a dad or even just a friend or whatever you are, you've got that one body. If there was anything that you could invest your time into, trading, like watching TikToks of like dogs and cats doing silly things, like taking that hour and being like, like how can I take care of my body better so that everything that I'm doing, I get a better return on my investment? Like to me, it's like, that's probably one of those things. Like,
right.
That's one of those things. So, but there definitely is a very big difference between that surface level, especially with the fitness industry, sometimes being dogmatic. Black and white, this is the right way, this is the wrong way, because it's sexy, that's what sells, that's what gets clicks on Instagram and TikTok. And the difference between that and then kind of what we're known for, which is this level of hyper individuality, figuring out what each individual person needs that's going to kind of be the gatekeeper behind results that they didn't think were possible prior.
Yeah. And that hyper individuality is probably what allowed you to break into the like high net worth, like athlete, you know, business guys, entrepreneurs, like really helping them, right? Because I would imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, that when you get into that world, I mean, everybody's running such a different race in their life, right? Like they all have a different schedule. They have different things that make them tick. Like they're high performers, right?
Yep.
And, you know, any high performer is typically very regimented in pretty much every area of their life. So you have to tailor, I would imagine, the plan directly to how they live their life, right?
100%. I mean, if you go into a Rolls-Royce dealership, I've never been into one, so I'm imagining this in my head. They probably don't have Rolls-Royce A, B, and C, and you can just get the cookie cutter version. Right. It's like, I want the constellation of the stars to be the night that I was born, and I want there to be a shooting star to go between the, like it's individualized. So there is a luxury side to it that it's like, if you have the funds for it, or if you're willing to invest the time, like, that's the next step in fitness, is trying to figure out how you can do it on an individual basis. But as well, I truly believe that 10, 15, 20 years from now, everyone is going to be talking about doing things individual to you. It's not just going to be, this is the best exercise. It's going to be, what's the best one for you? I think it's just a lack of education on why that's so important. And I think everyone's going to be pushing in that direction.
Sure.
So like with these high performers or these athletes, I've basically just, I don't have much that I do that's incredibly original. I've just learned from people who are extremely, extremely smart and have done things that I want to emulate, culminate it into one thing. And then we give it to these people, but they need those types of results. Like a pro football player might have a multi-million-dollar contract on the line, dependent on whether they gain 10 pounds of muscle or add 4 inches to their vertical. Or a high performer, they might need to unlock 50% more energy because they're about to jump into another company or whatever it is. So they're very serious scenarios that are dependent on their fitness results and kind of the limitations that are set on their body. And then, we just take that hyper individualized approach, and it makes it so clear. Yeah. It makes it so clear when we look at all the individual pieces, whether it's blood work, neurochemistry testing, the orthopedic stuff that we do, and then you see, oh, this is the problem. Yeah. Like, okay, cool. Let's just do this, and that becomes simple.
Yeah, it's super cool. How did you break into that? Like, who was your first like pro athlete guy or like big deal client where you're like, dang, like this could be a real thing?
Yeah. Honestly, again, everything that I've done, I've just been blessed to be around really, really cool people. I would say the first person that I was surrounded with, and probably my most influential mentor, was the late Charles Poliquin. Okay. I think I was maybe 17 when I went to like my first seminar of his. I was getting ready to go into college for exercise science. So we were already talking like student loans and everything else. And I was talking with my grandma at the time. I was like, hey, listen, like, I really think that this guy has a lot going on. Like, can you help me? So she like has been amazing. At that point in time, I was like, yeah, you know what? Like, I'll put up like $3,000 or whatever it is so you can go to the seminar. Go in, and there's a bunch of like 45-year-old dudes who are like a protein strength coach or like someone from Team USA, and I'm this like 17-year-old kid in there. And my goal was just to bug the crap out of Charles, like just make sure that he remembered me and try to learn as much as I could. went to as many of his seminars as I possibly could, consultations. And then a lot of times it's a really cool thing, and it's somewhat unique to Charles. He's a very kind person, but there's a lot of people like this, that if they see an individual who's young or even just ambitious and they want to kind of abandon everything else and just be like, please, like, whatever you're doing, I want to do it. Let me know. I'll work for free. I'll do this, whatever it is. They tend to invest quite heavily into that person. So everything that I've done up to this point, whether it's like God opening really cool doors or like individuals like Charles or Malcolm Gwilliam, they've been like, hey, listen, like Malcolm at the time with Source Performance was a company that I worked for out of Independence Gym. We were just talking about that. We had Austin Matthews come through. And it was the year after his rookie year. And so everyone's going crazy about him. He's like this incredible hockey player, and he's still absolutely incredible. And I remember the first time I got to train him by myself, I think Malcolm was going out of town or something like that. And so it's scenarios like that to where just people that I've gotten to learn from, right place, right time. Hey, here's an opportunity, train this person, or train this NFL guy, or train this Team USA wrestler, whoever it is. And then, just standing on the shoulders of giants, man, and years of working for people and connecting and getting results and furthering my education, it made it to where now I have my own company, and that's what I do. And now I'm getting to do the same thing with up-and-coming coaches. So,
which is really, really, really cool.
It's awesome. I love it.
What is the biggest like difference that you see between the different athletes and people? Like, what are the differences and the similarities that you see between these high performers? Like maybe take an NFL player versus a basketball player versus a bodybuilder versus a high level entrepreneur. Like, are there a lot of similarities, or are they okay?
Tons. Like people, but especially in the sports world, they like to get down to like sport specific training, right? Like I'm going to attach a football to a pulley system, and I'm going to have a quarterback like with resistance, like pretend to throw a ball. Like there's a very clear divide between what I do and what they can do like with a skills coach. So in my realm, the way I look at it is everyone has a body, whether it's you who comes in, whether it's an NFL player, whether it's Chris Bumstead, whoever it is, you all have a body. And then when we look at things in a very like microscopic manner, we can see where the dysfunction is. Whether you want to have more energy in a day, or Chris wants to not experience an injury year after year. He's been having these injuries. He doesn't want that going into the Olympia. Or an NFL athlete wants to run faster and recover faster. All of those things are dictated by blood markers, by what's going on with your gut, what's going on with your brain, what's going on with your tissues. Like if you've got a busted up knee and you can barely walk, you're not going to have the same confidence as if you just went out and you crushed a 6-year-old dude on a pickleball court over the weekend. You know what I mean? By the way, they're killers, man. Pickleball, I love it. But anyways, so all of those things, there is a very foundational level of your blood markers have to be good. We need to make sure gut health is good, brain health is good. We have to make sure from an orthopedic standpoint, everything is set, structurally balanced. And then from there is a sense of individuality. But I mean, who doesn't want abs? And who doesn't want to look jacked? And who doesn't want to, like, at a moment's notice, be like, yeah, like, let's go do a 5K, or like, hey, let's go play a pickup basketball game. Most people are the same, and the similarities in what success looks like across the board, there's more that's similar than what's different. There are instances where, like, with Chris, like, he's got to have the biggest quads in the freaking world. Like, the dude's legs are just stupid. Like, so that might not be you. Like, you might want to still be able to fit your slim fit jeans or whatever. And the athlete, him having a 42-inch vertical versus having a 38-inch vertical might be the difference between a contract or being a free agent. For you, doesn't make a difference. Like, that's impressive to any of your friends or to your family or whatever. You feel good, like you can play with the family, do your thing. So there are similarities more than people would think.
Let's talk about like blood markers and gut health and all of that, right? Like what are you looking for, when you're, and how do you analyze that data? What process do people go through when you're talking to somebody new, maybe? I'd imagine they go get their blood work done. Like talk to me about that and the gut health aspect and all of these different things that play into all of that.
Yeah. So one thing I'm huge into is I know the things that I'm very, very good at, and I know the things that I might be passionate about, but I'm definitely not like the expert in. So what we've done with Built Better is we have a telemedicine platform, and it's in all 50 states. Freaking awesome. We were able to partner with Dr. James Laval.
Okay.
He's kind of like I'd mentioned, my late mentor, Charles Poliquin. No one would argue he's the best strength coach that ever lived. Dr. James Laval is the same in the medical space. He's incredible. So everyone who comes into Built Better,
Yep.
and anyone that I help or whatever we do, they are through the back end funneled in, and they work with Dr. James Laval's team.
Okay.
So they have a few different standard blood marker protocols that we'll put people through. They answer a questionnaire that's very specific to what they're going to look for. They go and get, at any lab corp, they'll go through and get the blood draw. There's some really specialty tests in some scenarios. Otherwise, it's not too crazy.
Sure.
We'll do food sensitivity testing, everything else. And then they sit down, and his team paired with our team, we're able to kind of take our 2 points of view and come up with like, hey, you're lacking in this, or this, and this. When these 3 values are like this, it means this. So
Right.
like one of our recent clients, in his blood work, he's an executive. We both know who he is. We were just talking about him. His cortisol, he wasn't producing any cortisol. Cortisol is your stress hormone.
Yep.
It's really, really good to produce cortisol during the right times.
Sure.
If you're training or first thing in the morning, whatever it is, he was producing no cortisol.
Got it.
At all. So he's dead, and he owns multiple companies. And so in that case, we were able to look, of course, at like his cortisol scores, and we were able to look at a few other things and figure out why he wasn't producing it. And then we create supplementation protocols, lifestyle protocols, nutrition protocols, even the training and lifestyle protocols will affect the blood markers.
Sure.
And we build all of those pieces out to where everything is directed at attacking your weakest link. And so some people might need they might need prescriptions for things, or they might need specialty supplements or whatever it is, but it's all individualized.
Right. Yeah. And it's all based on real data, right? And real science of
Yep.
what that is. What would you say the most common thing that you see is? Like, you talked about the gentleman that we were, mentioning, which is that obviously had low cortisol, and you created those different protocols to get him back to, a balanced kind of state, right?
Yep.
But what do you see any commonality? And maybe it's like, there's a low testosterone epidemic right now in men. I've seen a lot of that, right? But is there a commonality that you've seen?
100%. Generally speaking, if we're talking about kind of the high performer, stresses are a little bit higher, and you're traveling a bunch, whatever it is, a lot of the people that we work with, most of the time, insulin and cortisol are kind of like 2 that most people have an issue with. Insulin tends to be more of a diet thing.
Okay.
But in these high-performing individuals, sometimes it's not a diet thing. Like I was hearing that your diet is like absolutely incredible. Like
Most of the time.
Most of the time,
yeah.
But you eat better than the average
Sure.
Joe,
Probably,
right?
yeah,
So,
for
but
sure.
let's say maybe we got your blood work done, and we find that your HbA1c, which is a good reflection of it's your insulin sensitivity.
Yep.
Maybe it's poor. It wouldn't be because of what you're feeding yourself with. It would be because insulin and cortisol have this inverse relationship. If cortisol is running too high too often, it can affect your insulin sensitivity.
Got it.
So those 2 things most of the time are something that I see pop up, especially with executives, business owners. That's super common because they're so stressed all the time. And so it kills their cortisol. They have this inverse relationship with energy to where first thing in the morning, they're having to have a ton of coffee or take a bunch of nootropics or whatever it is because they're dead in the morning, but then they're wired at night.
Right.
And then middle of the day, they're sleepy.
Yep.
And when they need the energy, they don't have it. They might have more cravings. They might have issues with self-control or drive, certain things that insulin cortisol mismanagement problem ends up turning into neurotransmitter issues. So like the brain chemicals, everything that you experience in your body is associated to a chemical. If you're driven, if you have good attention span, if you're tired, if you feel relaxed, or if you're anxious, whatever it is, all of that's driven by like specific ratios of neurotransmitters.
Interesting.
And if you have these blood marker issues, or if you have a gut problem or whatever it is, all of those things turn into a chemical experience that you feel, I'm tired, or oh my God, I'm so anxious all the time, or I'm not driven. It's all derived back to those foundational things.
It's kind of wild, when you really get into the nuts and bolts of the human body, right? And you look at, the high performers of the world and stuff, really everybody. But, everything that you're talking about it's very interesting. I can actually relate to quite a bit of that. I run multiple companies, probably similar to the guy we were talking about a little while ago. There's a lot of similarities there.
Yeah.
And I've struggled, big time over the years with, low energy and, just all kinds of like brain fog, like everything you essentially just mentioned, right?
Yeah.
And I've tried everything, dude. I just recently bought like a bunch of beef like supplements. So like beef liver, beef heart, beef kidneys, beef spleen, et cetera, right? I think even beef testicle is in some of my supplements. I just started taking them a few days ago.
Yeah.
But it is fascinating. And then you basically then just create the protocols, get them on those protocols, retest them, a few months later and see where their levels are at?
Yeah, it depends on what we're testing. Maybe we're testing, if it's blood work, it tends to be every 3 months to 6 months that we're checking. It's detailed enough that we know what we need to do, so we don't need to see it every 2 weeks or anything like that. We know we're going to be going in a good direction, but there might be other things from a reassessment standpoint that we have someone in person training that we might be testing their body fat every week, or we might be retesting their vertical or their force production or whatever. You know what I mean? It really depends on what the thing is. But blood markers, every 2 to 6 months tends to be pretty normal. But yeah, what you're explaining, that's most executives who fall into that category. And it's a pretty simple equation, like 1 + 1 = 2. Yeah. If you're an executive and you're extremely stressed and you're doing too much, it will result in this.
Right.
Like unless if you're a genetic phenom to where just like you can throw anything at you and like your body's not going to do anything.
Yep.
Most people, that's not the case.
Right.
And so what are your options? You can take that crummy situation and just stack things on top of it, hoping that it fixes the symptoms that you're experiencing, but really it just digs that hole deeper and deeper.
It does. Yep.
You can look at an Instagram post or do this and, oh, well, this person says that I should wait 90 minutes to have my caffeine. I'm going to do that from now on. Yeah. Maybe it helps a little bit, but it's so simple. You figure out you on an individual level, what is it that's causing the problem? What you're experiencing this, let's make sense of it. Once we make sense of it, you take an individual who understands the body as a whole, they can pick different pieces out, and then they build an individualized protocol to you, which then fixes this. And I think that's one of the biggest issues is you take someone like yourself, you're extremely driven. Yep. You're very, very good. You're at being ambitious, and you'll stick to protocols. You'll do whatever you need to do, right? Like the fruit of your businesses is proof of that. Yep. Most people don't realize that it can be easier. They're just like, nah, this is just the grind. Like this is, you know what I mean? I feel like crap all the time, and that's just how it is. I'm not saying that's you, but a lot of people, that's how it is. They just accept it. But slightly tweaking, taking a 10-minute pause, like, okay, like I'm going to do this. Let's figure out what the problem is. And then over the next couple of months, I'm going to fix it. And it's a completely different life experience. And that's our thing, is life transformative results. Whether it's extending an NFL athlete's career, making it to where Mr. Olympia can get another one, or making it to where an executive has more energy for their family, more energy for their businesses, more self-control, drive, attention span, whatever it is. You're the vessel, like I was saying earlier. Everything that you're able to touch, you're an extremely influential person, another executive, very influential to everyone around them. That's the most important investment someone can make, is in themselves. And it's pretty simple too, which is cool. Yeah. It's not crazy complex. Like, well, it's going to take 10 years and probably a couple mil. It's like, no, like you just got to do these couple things. Yeah. Yeah. Like you see the guy on YouTube. What's his name? The guy that's trying to live longer. I know exactly who you're talking about. He's like real famous right now. Yeah. Yeah. You see people, he'd be spending millions of dollars, taking, I think like 100 pills a day or something, literally he wears a Whoop. I think I watched a video the other day where he said he's at 100% sleep performance for like 1,000 days in a row. Attaboy. It's like, that's awesome. Like crazy. Like not 99%. Like we're 100. Talking 100%, you know? And it's wild, right? But it's all possible. You see him, he's just, now obviously not everybody can do that, right? Sure. He, I think, sold his company, made a lot of money, and he was able to just kind of, like, that became his life, Are you seeing right now, one thing that I've seen a lot, I actually think I saw a video the other day, Steve Cook posted on his YouTube channel, I want to say, I could be wrong, I'm almost positive,
where he said and you know, for anybody who, I mean, you know Steve Cook, right? I mean, he's a good looking dude. You know, he's pretty jacked. You would assume that you know, he has real high levels of testosterone, et cetera. And apparently he went to the lab and got his blood work done, and his testosterone was like really low, right? Yeah. And that same thing actually happened to me not too long ago, where I'm like, man, like, you know, what is going on here, right? And I went and I checked my testosterone level, and I was like really low, right? And I was like, what in the world, right? And so are you seeing that more and more? And if so, what's the cause of that epidemic?
Yeah, so I definitely am seeing it. There was some statistic for every year or whatever it is, testosterone scores are dropping a point on average, or it was something like that. I don't remember the exact metric, but testosterone levels are dropping on average. But also stress levels are getting higher and higher and higher. Stress and testosterone, one of the like raw materials, progesterone that are used to build testosterone, it's also used to build cortisol. So if your cortisol is running too high too often, you don't have the same building blocks to then build testosterone. Then there's also, like, the point is there's a million ways this can happen, but another one is through aromatization. So if you have too much toxicity, too much stress, different things that are going to cause more of that conversion, more of that aromatization, you might have a 600 testosterone score. It's easy to explain this way. You might have a 600, but then 20% of that is aromatizing into estrogen. And then having your estrogen too high creates more emotional issues. It creates more X, Y, and Z problems. And then there's more of this. Right. It could be a light exposure thing. There's a really big correlation between your androgens and light exposure, especially because if you have poor light exposure, you'll have poor sleep and poor recovery.
Meaning what exactly?
So
when you talk about light exposure, are you talking about sunlight?
So more like blue light.
Blue light.
Blue light, yeah. So
too much blue light.
Too much blue light and at the wrong time. So most people are staring at a screen before they go to bed, and it's dark, and so you're that blue light that's emitted from your phone is very similar to the same light waves that are emitted from the sun around noon.
Interesting.
So you have light receptors in your eyes and in your skin, and your body reacts to the type of light, the wavelength, et cetera, and it creates a different hormone experience, neurotransmitter experience based on the light that it's getting. That's why our bodies know when to wake and when to go to sleep based off the sun. But anyways, so you have this blue light. You're telling your body, hey, it's noon. You're getting this dopamine kick from everything that you're watching. Then you go, okay, I'm going to go to sleep now. Your body's like, I thought it was noon. Like, what are we doing? I was driven. I was excited. And now you want to go to sleep. Then you don't sleep well. Then your androgens drop because you're not recovering. You're not giving your body the time to detox everything and to repair everything. So it's this like night after night after night after night, and you have years and years of this stacked on top of each other. And then, of course, your testosterone is going to be low.
Right.
So there's a million factors that can cause it.
Food's one of them, I would imagine.
Food is one of them. Yep.
People aren't eating, I mean, progressively, I would say, in the U.S. and abroad, you know, the food that we are putting into our bodies is progressively getting worse.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, it's a whole thing that, you know, Robert F. Kennedy is running on right now, right, is the health epidemic, if you will, in America, obviously, right?
Yeah. No, yeah, and that's a huge piece of it. And, of course, the food choices are really important in terms of, like, are you eating enough protein? Are you eating good fats, whatever? I would say a bigger piece that's associated with the androgen issues, the testosterone, is more so on the side of, like, the chemicals and the processed piece of it. So whenever you eat a chemical or put a chemical on your skin or there's a chemical in there, whatever it is, your body has to detox it. It doesn't just chill, you know what I mean? Your body already detoxes on average over 500 chemicals a day. That's like average human.
Wow.
But then you have a ton of processed foods with a bunch of chemicals in them. What happens? They go into your body's overloaded. It doesn't get as good at the two detox pathways for getting this back out. Then these chemicals that are in your body, what's your body going to do with it? They're called xenoestrogens. So those toxins can be estrogen mimicking chemicals. Those will influence your hormones. Too many xenoestrogens will cause more of that aromatization or that conversion of testosterone over to estrogen.
Got it.
So then you have that and your testosterone's even lower.
Yeah.
Right? And another thing that's kind of funny that happens is, and this is something that's super easy for people to do, is if you pinch different fat spots on your skin, if it's really thick and hard, like it's not malleable, there's more toxins that are stored in that fat tissue.
Interesting.
And that is much harder to get rid of than something that's very malleable. So now you're even making the fat that you have harder to lose because it's more toxic.
Wow.
And now your fat loss approach has to be completely different. And then too much fat is very estrogenic. You have more aromatization. Your androgens are lower. Like it's a downward spiral that's fueled by us wanting dopamine and pleasure kicks and everything needing to be more and more convenient, efficient. That's why something like a protein bar is more attractive than sitting down and having an 8-ounce steak with some rice.
Sure. Yeah.
This is too slow. I need this. And then downward spiral.
This is wild. Talk to me a bit about the extreme diets out there, right? Like you'll go on Netflix, you'll see a documentary on being vegan, right? And they will sell you the dream on vegan is the best way in the world, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then you'll go on YouTube and you'll see the Liver King talking about, just eating 100%, meat and animals, right?
Yeah.
The carnivore diet.
Yeah.
And, and everything in between, right? Those are just two examples, but you have a lot of people out there that take these very extreme approaches to diet, right?
Yep.
Where it's like, I'm only going to eat this. I'm only going to eat that. What is your general thought on that? And do you think that any of it has any merit? Or, are you more of just, is your normal recommendation to somebody just to eat a balanced, healthy, whole food diet? Well, how do you kind of view that?
Yeah. So the tough part is, again, we live in a space where we want clicks. We want something that's different. So if me posting on Instagram saying, hey, I'm going to have gluten-free oats and I'm going to have 6 ounces of chicken with it. Right. It's like, okay, cool. Like that's most people. But if I say, I'm only going to eat cow balls for the next 6 months, people are like, oh my God, like I want to watch them do this. This is crazy. Like, so then that stuff boils to the surface. And then people associate, wow, this is getting a lot of publicity. This guy has a crazy physique. That must be the answer. People want a singular answer, but there's no single program. There's no single diet. There's no single anything that is a Band-Aid, fix all, everything's good, right? There are principles that can be taken from those things. So like having the organ meats, there's some really cool stuff from it. Does that mean you should only eat organ meats?
Right.
Most people, probably not. And anyways, like I don't want to do that. Like I don't like the taste of them that much. So that's just me personally. Or like the vegan or this or that, like there are certain things that you can pull from them. But when we're talking the majority, the 70% rule, I like kind of phrasing it like this. If it didn't walk, fly, swim, or be on the earth in general, and a caveman didn't have access to it, 95% of the time you shouldn't have access to it. That's what you should fill your majority with. And then the other 10%, 5%, like we're here in Scottsdale. I know people who, when they get here, they're like, oh my God, I'm going to go to In-N-Out. We don't have this in our state. Like, cool. Like go get your double, go do your thing. Like, but don't make that your majority. I think that's where most people should start.
Sure.
Following that is playing with the protein side of things. Over 70% of the things in our body are amino acid built or amino acid influenced. Amino acids are just broken down protein.
Sure.
These amino acids tell our body to repair. They say protect muscle. They say protect tissues like your brain tissue, your organ tissue, whatever it is. So protein is extremely, extremely important. So filling your diet with protein-rich foods that aren't crazy processed and that have the right amino acids in them, that's the next thing. And truthfully, if I had 100 people come in right now and they said, what can I implement? Because I want to get leaner, I want to build some muscle, and I want to feel better. Guarantee you most people aren't doing that perfectly. And if they did that, they would experience the change.
So if they just literally ate more protein, if they just have more protein in their diet, they would start to experience positive change.
Yeah, and of course there's levels to this.
Sure.
The individuality, like I said, like we'll have two athletes who are the same position, same body composition, but based on blood work, this, that, and the other, they have two completely different diets, right? It depends on your ancestral background. It depends on the time of year. It depends on a lot of different things. But most people would benefit just from doing that, 100%.
Yeah. Would you say that most people probably just plain and simply don't ingest enough protein?
Absolutely.
Like they like there's the old rule, 1 gram, what is it, 1 gram per pound
Yep.
of body fat, so like I think 170, probably 175 right now. So I should be roughly, if I want to build muscle, maintain muscle,
Yep.
Correct me if I'm wrong, roughly 175 grams of protein.
Exactly. And I think one of the most important parts with that, because you described it as if I want to put on muscle,
Sure.
right? Okay, maybe there's a 50-year-old lady who watches this and goes, well, I don't want to put on muscle.
Right.
Then I'm going to eat half of that,
Yeah.
right? One of the things that's misunderstood is muscle is the organ of aging. Your whole muscle system, it's an organ, right? And the more muscle that you have, not only do you experience more strength, but you also have a better metabolism and your blood markers will be improved.
Wow.
The two things that are most correlated to your the length of your life and the quality of your life, the like fancy words are sarcopenia and dynopenia. All that means is how much muscle do you have and how much strength do you have?
Wow.
That's dictated by muscle, right? And then the other thing, we just talked about how insulin and cortisol are two of the most common things that we see in the blood work issues. The more muscle mass you have, the more insulin receptor sites you have. And if it was built through resistance training, the more sensitive those insulin receptor sites are. What does that mean in layman terms? More muscle, better insulin sensitivity, which will also help with cortisol management inversely.
Sure.
And then it's also going to help with the quality of your life. But 100%, there's varying studies out there about how much protein you should have. Bare minimum, it's pretty clear, is 1 gram per kilo.
Okay.
So 175 pounds, let's say you're like, what would that be, like 82 kilo, 80 kilos, something like that.
Okay.
So 80 grams is bare minimum.
That's like the bottom. Like if I don't hit 80, I'm screwed.
Bare minimum.
Yeah.
Bare minimum. Most people, though, 1 gram per pound is what they should be doing.
Sure.
But honestly, why is it that someone would be more interested in doing the Liver King thing or watching the vegan documentary? There's a culture associated with it, and there's a dopamine kick. Like, ooh, like that's cool, that's sexy. Like, I'm gonna order some liver pills, and like that's how I'm gonna get shredded. And it feels easier than just being like, I have to get rid of my Lay's in the fridge or in the pantry, and I got to get rid of this and this, and now I have to take more time to prep my food. And protein. Like, how am I gonna eat 180 grams of protein a day? That's so much. It's not sexy. But often the best things in life are on the other side of a little bit of difficulty, a little bit of hard work. And honestly, like it becomes second nature. You've been eating clean for probably a while, like
the majority of the time. Yeah.
And it's normal to you. If you went and you had 2 weeks of eating like garbage, you'd feel terrible, right? It's your new normal.
Sure.
I feel like if more people adopted that mindset that like, this is not what it's meant to be. Like I was not designed to have all of this. I was designed to have a better life experience, a better physique, a better mental state, whatever it is. I just need to bite the bullet.
Yeah.
This is what I need to do.
And is it true that having more muscle burns more fat just in a resting state?
Yeah. So I wouldn't necessarily say burns more fat, but it is more calorically demanding. It demands more energy. I'm forgetting the exact metric in my head, but a pound of fat compared to a pound of muscle, the pound of muscle almost takes twice as many calories to maintain.
Wow.
So for you to live, if you were the same weight, but you're just like a big, like blubbery ball of fat versus you being jacked and you got muscle, this takes way more calories to maintain, right? So there's that piece of it. So yeah, now your metabolism is churning a little bit more than your counterpart.
Sure.
But then as well, we were talking about how that muscle affects your hormones, your insulin sensitivity, your ability to stabilize your blood sugar, which is kind of step one of entering burning fat. So because you don't have this crazy insulin spike and your blood sugar is doing this all day and it's mismanaged, because you have muscle and it kind of helps keep it steady, because you have that now, of course, like you have the ability to burn fat more efficiently.
Sure. That's really cool. I want to go back and talk about, because you've actually done some shows. I think several shows, correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah. Tell me about that journey and that process, and what type of shows did you compete in, and what did that look like for you?
Oh man, yeah, I love the sport of bodybuilding. Yeah. I love it. It's so fun. And when I was in it, I felt this way. I don't know if I feel the same way now, that bodybuilding is by far one of the hardest sports, because it's 24/7. I'll have a pro athlete come in and they'll train their tail off and they're killing themselves. But then on the weekend, they don't tell me and they go out with the boys and they drink or that, you know what I mean? They do whatever they do.
Sure.
Bodybuilding,
Can't do that.
You can't do that. If you show up on stage and you're not lean, everyone's going to know. And that's the way that they measure whether you're successful or not, is how lean you can get in the presentation of the muscle and everything there. And it is an art form too, which I feel like is part of the attraction for me.
Sure.
But yeah, I've been competing. Let's see, I think I did my first show when I was 18. Did it for 5-6 years. The goal was always to get a pro card.
Yep.
Kind of reached a point, one of my mentors had told me, he's like, listen, man, like you could totally keep going, go get a pro card, like try to work your way up. But like you have to decide, what do you want to put your energy into?
Right.
Do you want to put your energy into your business, which is influential and impactful for many people? You have more time and energy for your family. And like we just had our daughter, Marilyn, about 5 months ago. Thank you. So I could do that, or I could really go in on bodybuilding, but I'm not going to be as good at those other things.
Sure.
And so that was kind of the reason that the chapter closed. But yeah, man, I love it. And it's taught me so much about nutrition. And I really do feel like as well, just on a personal level, it taught me a level of drive that I don't think many other things would have taught me.
Yeah.
Those nights when it's like, oh, I've already had my last meal, 3 hours till I'm supposed to go to sleep. I got to wake up and do this tomorrow, and I'm dead tired, and I'm so hungry right now, and I still have to go do an hour of cardio. Like there's nothing like it. Like intentionally torturing yourself and like trying to push your body on that level of like eat yourself away. Like I literally want you to kill parts of your body and use it for fuel, because I'm not going to give you enough energy from what I'm eating. I think it's so cool. And the presentation on stage too, like I love it. It's so pretty when you get the right physique and the transitions. Like it's beautiful.
Yeah, no, it really is a crazy sport. Do you think that the sport of bodybuilding has changed over the years? You know, when you look back in the day at, you know, the Arnolds and the, you know, people like that. I mean, how has that sport changed, you know, with the invention of social media and just like technology and information and all of that stuff?
No, I think it's changed a ton. Of course, like the presentation of the bodybuilders has changed. The looks that they're looking for has changed quite a bit. And I would say the social media aspect has changed things a lot too. Of course, like for an athlete like that, one, the bodybuilding space is not exactly like, it's not as big as the NFL. It's not as big as the NBA. I think without social media, it wouldn't be taking the leaps and bounds that it's currently taking, because I think that's part of it. There's an unfortunate side, that there's a vanity side and kind of this selfish, ooh, look at me, look at what I look like side of it that fuels the dollars that are in it a little bit. But on the positive side, I think that people being able to follow someone that like, oh my gosh, that's so inspirational that this dude has looked like this for a year, or he's gone through this, and this in order to go through one of the hardest sports in the world to step on the stage and look like this. I think it's incredibly inspirational. And I think that's part of the reason why it's grown so much. And I do think it changes people's lives. Like I said, for me, it taught me a level of drive and focus that I don't think a lot of things would. So yeah, the media space changed it a lot.
For sure, yeah. And we'll talk a little bit more about social media in a minute. Chris Bumstead won Mr. Olympia, correct me if I'm wrong.
6 times.
6 times. So he's a beast.
He's a beast.
And you were training him at one point, I believe, when he won Mr. Olympia. Talk to me about that experience and how did that look and feel?
Yeah, man. I mean, every single person I've gotten the chance to work with, it's been an honor and a blessing to be brought into their space and be trusted with their body and their performance and their results. Chris is one that's super, super special to me, just with my love of the sport and being able to influence that was really big. I was coaching his brother-in-law, actually, Ian Valier. He was an open bodybuilder. So the dude was like 265 shredded, like just a freak, huge. And he came out of bodybuilding and said, you know what, like, I want to go be a sprinter now. It's like, what? Like, do you want to sprint?
Yeah.
And so him and I started working together, got him really great results. Just 6 months, got him to the point to where he was able to sprint and his body was feeling incredible.
Sure.
Of course, Chris hears about this. So we knew of each other through that. And then we started having conversations surrounding the app that I'm a part of now, the Standard Training app, which is Chris's platform. And we're building into some really awesome stuff coming in the future. But anyways, it started with that. And I want to say about 1.5 years ago, it was like, hey, listen, like, I really think what I can do for you, it's going to change your career. And at the time he was retiring. He was like, I'm done competing. I just want to feel really good now. And so I started coaching him about a year and a half ago. His body got to the point to where it was feeling really, really, really good. And he was putting on size in areas that he hadn't been able to just from implementing the things that we were doing. Blood markers were looking good. Everything was in a position to where he was like, you know what, like, let's go for another one. So it's kind of an unintended opportunity to then help do his training protocols and help get him in with the doctors and talk about supplementation and everything else leading into that final Olympia. And in my opinion, he brought his best physique, which of course, like, I'm such a tiny piece of all the things that I do, but it was really cool to be like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like, your back was brought up and your arms were brought up and you didn't have any injuries. And he had a quote at the end of it all that he had said he feels better now 10 years later than he did when he started his career. And so to me, it was like, oh, like, he could have lost the Olympia just knowing that he feels good. Like, it's like, oh, that's awesome. No injuries, no nothing. Like, yeah, so it was really cool.
That's super cool. Yeah. What is it like building an app out with him? You know, talk to me about how did that come about? You know, you're obviously a part of that, right?
Yeah.
Where did that start and where is it going?
Yeah. So Chris had his app prior to this rebranding and calling it Standard. Prior, it was Chris is this big name bodybuilder. They built an app that was associated with him. Has some cool workouts in it. They get some exclusive stuff with Chris. Cool. Like, that's all it was. In the thought process of him retiring, it became like, okay, what's next? And one thing that's really cool about Chris is his ability to want to impact people. Like, he's one of those people that, like, and I feel like this is part of the reason why he's done the things that he's done, is he knows that there's more that can be done, and he's extremely selfless. So in him making the Standard app, it was like, okay, I want to take everything that I've done, which I feel like I have a higher standard of living, a higher standard of self-expectation, but there's secrets behind it. It's not just, hey, you need to be better. It's, hey, you need to be better, and this is how you can do it, and this is how you can support yourself or have people support you. And so he in that, instead of just having him be like, I don't know, 3 sets of 12 on dumbbell flies and this and this and this, it was like, hey, you know what? Like, I believe Justin is one of the best in the space for doing this. Let's bring some program writing, some nutrition, supplementation, lifestyle advice into this.
That's super cool.
That's actually going to change people's lives. So it's been a really cool experience. And truthfully, right now, there's nothing like it in the space. I think there's some really great minds out there, of course, and there's people that know way more than I do when it comes to training and everything else. But I think the intentionality behind everything that we're doing, what one of the examples is our periodization and the programs that we're putting out. Nothing is just like hey, this will get you some good results for 3 weeks. Everything is, this is phase 1, and I have it built out to where 7 years later, everything is very thoughtfully building on top of each other so that by the time you get to here, you've experienced the best possible results that you can have in a 7-year time span, right? Or cool. Building out education, or almost like the like modules behind nutrition and how you can do this and how you can do this. Like, it's turning into something that's really, really cool. And that I tell the team all the time, this 10 years from now, people are going to look back and be like, the Standard app changed the fitness world. It gave people insight into the things that
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, I love watching his videos, and when I heard that you were, helping him and working with him, I mean, I was like, dang, that's pretty cool, because he blew up on YouTube and all the platforms, I feel like, over the last couple of years, I want to talk a bit about social media and how social media has affected, I guess, for the good or for the bad, people's expectations when it comes to, like, fitness and, like, looking good and feeling good, right? Because I feel like nowadays, we're always comparing. We live in a society, whether people like it or not, and whether they really realize it or not, I think, like, we're constantly comparing ourselves to other people, right?
Yep.
And do you think that some of these big fitness influencers ever, like, is that ever bad, you know, when it comes to like people watching and looking at these guys and trying to be like them, you know, but in reality, maybe they have no business, you know, even attempting that or whatever?
Oh, absolutely. I do think there are some issues in it. Comparison's the thief of joy.
Right.
You have what you have, and it's individual to you. There's never going to be another Austin that's like you. There's never going to be another Justin that's like me.
Yep.
And I will never be you, and you will never be me. And it's not some negative connotation thing like, oh yeah, you can't be me. It's like, no, just you have incredible things about you that like that you're blessed with that. That is you. That is you entirely. And of course, like we were talking about, there's the side of clicks and saying things that are sexy that causes eyeballs to be drawn to you, and you can build a platform. But there's also an extremely manipulative side to it, or sometimes unintentional manipulative side to it, that someone might post something that says something along the lines of like, this is the exercise you should do for your chest. And someone goes in and it's not true. That is not the exercise you should do for your chest, but it got you clicks, which gets you funds, which helps get you a life and further you forward. But what people don't know is all the things that you have going on behind the scenes. Maybe it took you 20 years to build that physique. Maybe you're not talking about some of the things that have helped enhance your physique to that point. There's a lot of things that aren't in the forefront when people do those things. So I think there is a beautiful way to do it. I think when people are transparent and when they're very forthcoming about, hey, listen, I've been doing this for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I've learned from this person, or I've done this thing, or these are the things that you can do that will help you learn from my mistakes. Like, that stuff is awesome when people do that. The tough part is everything doesn't and shouldn't have to come with a disclaimer.
Right.
Towards like, hey, but before you do this, here's a 3-paragraph thing about what I've been doing and how I'm going to say this thumbnail, but it's really not true. Like, it's tough because it's the business. The only way that I've gone about it, because I'm not necessarily going to say how other people should do it, but I've just tried to be as transparent as possible.
I feel like transparency is like the key.
It is.
With the whole thing.
And honestly, I believe that when you go about something with the right heart, not only is it going to be more impactful to those people, but I feel like in the end, it ends up working out.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm never going to have a scenario to where someone comes up to me and they're upset because I led them on with what they could or couldn't do, because I'm being transparent. Like,
You're being honest.
I'm telling them exactly how it is. So I'm not going to have those issues in the future.
Sure.
And it inspires other people. And just to circle back with Chris, I feel like that's one of the reasons why he is where he is. I think part of it is true.
Yeah, and you can literally feel it when you watch him.
Yeah.
You're like, dude, this guy's authentic, bro.
100%.
You know?
100%. And that's refreshing.
Right.
Him being the sore thumb that sticks out is not saying, this is the way you should do it and you're garbage if you don't do this. It's like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I own these businesses and I won 6 times and this. And like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Wow,
Like, I'm going to go learn from someone who does know what they're doing. Like, I feel like that can almost be a strategy to help with certain things. But also, like, man, I believe that I believe that God supernaturally blesses things when someone's heart is in the right place. It may be more difficult in the short term.
Sure.
But in the long term, like, it works out. It works out the exact way it's supposed to.
Dude, I agree with you completely. You know, I'm obviously a Christian, big believer, you know, and all my partners are believers, and a lot of my staff and a lot of my different, you know, people that are within my organizations are believers, because you tend to attract the people that that you're like, you know, and the culture and everything like that. And I couldn't agree more, dude. I think when, and I do agree with you too. I think that sometimes when your heart is in the right place and you're, you know, man or woman of God, and you do the right thing, sometimes it can temporarily be harder.
Absolutely.
Right. And I think a lot of that is probably God preparing us for what we asked for, you know, and I talk a lot about that on, you know, some of my social medias, just talking about like, hey, you asked for X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
Now, God will give it to you, but he's got to prep you first.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you can't just, because if he just gives that to you right now, what you asked for, like, you're not ready for it, right? And so I totally agree, man. I want to talk a bit about this whole body positivity movement that we're seeing a little bit of, right?
Yeah.
I feel like just the world we live in right now in general is just a bit of an odd world.
Yeah.
We've kind of gotten to this place where hopefully it changes in the future, but, with all of the different just stuff that is being forced down our throats, but like, what do you have to say about that? Like people who are just accepting the fact, basically, because the way that I view it, I'd love to get your thought is, these are people that, without being rude, really, I don't know how you cannot be, but these are people that have kind of, I feel like, given up, and they've just allowed themselves to feel good about that very thing by kind of being a part of this movement, if you will. But it's like, wait a minute, like, no, you're just really super unhealthy.
Yeah.
And you're not taking initiative to fix that problem. Like, what do you think about it?
So in my head, I think you're hitting the nail on the head with they want to be a part of something. What's the basis of why someone has to give a title or a group or a movement to something like that?
Right.
At the basis of this, everyone wants to feel loved. Everyone wants to feel like they are enough.
Like they matter.
They want to feel like there's people around them who support them. That's the basis of it. So I think that's...
And that's every human being.
That's every human being, whether you're shredded or whether you're 600 pounds.
Yep.
Like, it's the same thing. So I think that's the foundational piece that's missing, is people want to talk about like, no, like if you're fat, don't be fat. Or like, no, I am fat and that's okay. Like, no, that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about whether you deserve love and whether you are loved.
Sure.
That's what it is. So once that's foundational, then we can go into, okay, what's causing it? What's causing it? Like, because there might be someone who's extremely overweight and they feel like, no, just anything I do, it won't fix it.
Right.
Okay. Are we looking at things like, when you make the decision to eat the food, you're getting this dopamine kick, right? So it's an addiction. It's literally an addiction to food. And then maybe you have gut issues and you have this and you have that. You're literally creating an environment. I've said it like 2 or 3 times. You're creating an environment in your body that creates a neurotransmitter cascade. You're living in this body experience that you're going to experience an addiction to food that I don't experience.
Yep.
I'll eat a donut and it's like, wow, that was good. I'm done. Someone else, because they have a gut issue and because their blood sugar is mismanaged, so the only time that they feel good is when it's spiked or whatever it is, that's the issue. Right? So then there's fixing that and realizing like, no, you're right. It probably feels like we need to accept the fact that you're fat because your reality is it feels like you have to be.
Yeah, like there's no other choice.
And you can't do anything about it. But it's that you're misinformed and you don't understand what the real issue is. So if you feel loved, and then you understand like, oh, wow, like this is the problem. And then you start to fix it. Then there's less of an obesity problem. And then if you feel secure in yourself, it's okay to be like, wow, I shouldn't be fat. This is a bad thing. I'm not managing and stewarding my temple. And this is not good for me. It's not good for my family. It's not good for the people that I want to impact. So you figure that out. But then the issue of being fat or not fat is the same thing of like, if we were sitting down and you were mentoring me on my business and you said, Justin, listen, like you need to be more risky and you need to invest in marketing or whatever it is. I'm not going to go, no, I'm part of the non-marketing group, like marketing, non-marketing positivity. It's like, no, like you're not attacking me. You're just telling me that there's something outside of me that I can improve on. And it's out of love. It's like, dude, like, you could have a much better business and a better life. Like you should do this. Then it becomes that. But yeah, just down to brass tacks, no. Like, there's no one on earth that is healthy at 30% body fat.
No.
That's not a thing. Like, oh, but I've gotten blood work done. Like, I had a client the other day that had said, like, well, I've gotten a full blood panel done. It's like, that's cool. It's a full blood panel. He's like, oh, there are like 12 things on it. It's like, oh, dude, like, no, we do like 90 things on ours. And like, how are you feeling? What's your life experience? What's this? What's that? Like, there's not a single person that their inflammation is managed, their androgens are high, their energy is good when they're that fat.
Sure.
We're not made to be like that. Maybe there's someone who walks around at 8% body fat and there's someone who walks around at 14 and that's like what's comfortable for your body. And that's fine. But no, by no means there's no such thing as an optimally healthy person who's overweight.
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. And the unfortunate reality is we live in a world where, and I don't even know what the statistic is, we'd have to look it up. If somebody's watching, they can look it up. But I mean, I want to say it's like a pretty big, it's like an astounding percentage
over 50%
of people who are obese. who are considered to be obese in the U.S. I think it's, I want to say it's actually quite a bit higher than 50%.
Yeah. So
like 70%.
One interesting thing. So we were talking about uncovering the reasons why,
right?
If you look at a chart of the U.S. and you look at what percentage of people are obese, and then you look at every other country and their percentage of obesity, it's almost exact to the amount of people that don't have proper sleep hygiene.
Interesting.
So something like as simple as sleep is going to affect whether or not you're obese. And that's partially because of how it affects your androgens and your hormones, your energy level, but also your decision making.
Right.
So they did a study that was surrounding when they do the time changes. We are blessed, we're in Arizona, so we never have to do that. But when they switch it back an hour, and let's say usually you get 7.5 hours of sleep and you get 6.5 instead because they move the time back an hour, the amount of wrecks on the road that go up, it's staggering.
Really?
And when they do a cognitive assessment of the people who are short just by 1 hour of sleep, it's the same cognitive ability as someone that is at the alcohol limit, like the blood alcohol limit. That's what your decision-making ability is at. So of course,
that's
like
wild.
if your sleep is bad and you're overweight, it's like you had a couple of drinks and someone goes, do you want chicken breast or do you want the cake? It's like, oh, definitely the cake. Like, of course you're going to make bad decisions. Right. But then you figure out, like, why is this a thing? Like, you see the symptom. There's a cause for the symptom. Okay, let's figure out what the cause is. And then you fix that. And then it changes this body experience that you have. And it's like, wait a second, like, it's getting easier to make these decisions. And then you start losing weight and then everything improves. Like, yeah, but there's almost always a cause.
Sure, totally. It is crazy when you like put that into perspective. You know, with sleep. Sleep is so important. You know, and I'm definitely not a perfect sleeper. It's actually something I'm working on big time.
Yeah,
trying to get better sleep hygiene and get in better routines and stuff like this. Hard. It goes back to, like, you know, being a high performer, entrepreneur, athlete, whatever, fill in the blank. You know, the increased difficulty is on another level, right? Because it's like, my mind is always going. I can't shut it off. You know, it's extremely difficult. Okay, well, a couple final questions in conclusion here as we start to wrap up. I know that you take a very individualized approach when you coach and train people, right? But if you were, for the viewers, okay, let's just say this clip were to get, a million eyeballs, and you had to give a blanket statement to everybody, okay? Of, hey, if you just went to the gym 3 times a week for 45 minutes, or if you just went and did the Stairmaster for 15 minutes 3 times a week, or if you did the sauna, like, what is a generic program that somebody could just follow and be healthier? Is there one?
No, there definitely is. There are some foundational things. So, like, first and foremost, 7.5 hours of sleep is bare minimum. Everyone should get. You do that, that's one of the biggest things that you can do. From there, when it comes to, like, going to the gym and what you should do, it's shown resistance training is going to have the biggest effect, both short-term and long-term, on your health, your performance, your physique, everything.
Yep, it's like lifting weights.
Lifting weights, exactly.
Yep.
It is important, though, to do something that you enjoy. So if you go in and you go to lift weights and you hate it, like, and you've paid for a coach or you've read about a program or whatever, and you try it out for 6 months.
Yeah.
If you hate it, but you love yoga, okay, like, go do yoga. Go do yoga. Like, it's not going to get you the fastest and most aggressive result, but, like, go do something you enjoy.
Right.
I personally believe that you should do something active pretty much every day, whether that's getting enough steps in, or maybe it's like going and doing some recovery stuff or resistance training or a mix of resistance training and other modalities. Where it becomes a little bit more complex, I would love if it were as simple as, like, if everyone went to the gym and did this exercise and did this many reps, boom, you're set. Like, generalized advice in that sense, it would be like telling someone, like, starting their business, like, okay, my general advice for you who owns a huge business and also 17-year-old who's starting their business is this. It's like, no, there's levels to it, and it depends on the person. So when it comes to the actual program, there are some 70% rules that take care of the majority of people, such as the resistance training piece. That's big.
Yeah, like work out 5 times a week.
Yeah, like honestly, 4 times even.
Really?
4 times. We've gotten incredible results. We had one of our guys in 6 weeks. He dropped 10.1% body fat.
Wow.
While doing that, he put on 11 pounds of lean mass, and that was in 6 weeks. In 6 weeks, from
4 times a week.
4 times a week.
Monday through Thursday, or spread out more?
He did Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday.
Monday, Tuesday. So took a break on Wednesday, and then you have Saturday, Sunday.
Exactly.
Okay.
So it doesn't even have to be that much, but the resistance training is big. If you can, like if there's anything that's like one step more complex, it would be following some form of a protocol. Because if a layman gym goer were to try to build a split, you're intentionally doing something. It'd be like having a granite block and you want it to be this sculpture and you just start hammering at it. At some point in time, you're going to cut too far in on the head and then it's like, oh God, like now I got to go back and do this. Like it kind of is a serious thing going and doing resistance training. If you do it kind of willy-nilly over the span of a year, most people are going to get a back issue. They're going to get a knee issue. They're going to get a shoulder, an elbow issue, whatever it is. There's smart ways to navigate that. So like that's partially why I'm excited about the Standard app, is it has my brain behind the protocols kind of going, okay, what's going to be good for the 70% of people? So there's very inexpensive options that you follow. You track your loads, you do all of that. But let's say you don't want to do that. Training in full range of motion is super important. Generally speaking, free weights is going to have a better longevity effect and a better, I would even say short term in some instances, but we're talking about like the executive. We're not talking about a bodybuilder. Like if you compare a back squat to a leg press, a back squat requires you to have more structural balance, be able to get a full range of motion, stay upright. Like it's
that compound movement, right?
A compound movement. And it's going to hit a lot more muscles. In a way that carries over more than just like, oh, cool, my legs are big, but I can only squat down this far. Like, or my legs are big, but I have terrible back issues. Like if you're doing full range squats, full range overhead press, you can do chin ups. Like most likely your body's going to be in a pretty good spot compared to someone else who did all machines for a year. You're probably going to like be walking around like this, and you're not from a size standpoint, but you're internally rotated, you have range of motion issues, and then what are you doing? Now you're having to fix your body and try to progress.
Yeah, now you got to go to physical therapy and try to do the other thing. One of my final questions is, the cold plunge in the sauna is obviously, between Andrew Huberman and all the different people, have made it wildly popular. I think I've seen statistics on the sauna saying, I want to say 3 or 4 times a week in the sauna for 15 minutes or something reduces all cardiovascular disease by like 70% or something stupid like that, right? And then the cold plunge, obviously great for inflammation, stuff like that. Do you recommend that to a lot of the pro athletes and bodybuilders and stuff that you train?
Yeah.
And would you recommend it to anybody watching the show? Like, is it beneficial to any human being to, introduce that protocol in their life?
It absolutely is. And I would recommend it, and I do recommend it. The lowest hanging fruit that is more applicable to most people would be the sauna.
Okay.
Sweating, which is a form of detoxing and getting the heat. And even if you can do like a far infrared sauna, that's going to have even more benefits. I'd say slightly different benefits than just like one where you've got the stones.
Yeah, where it's just 200 degrees.
Exactly. Yeah. That is more applicable in most cases. The cold plunge is very beneficial, but you have to be smart about who's using it, and you have to be smart about when you're using it. So like if we're going back to this individual who's resistance training, they want their physique to look good, and whatever. Like you don't want to do it too close to the workout.
Right.
Like you don't want to do it post-workout. It interferes with the inflammation response, which is a good inflammation response that helps recovery. So you wouldn't want to do that.
Sure.
Or let's say you're a high-level executive and you're having problems with your cortisol. Extreme temperatures such as extreme cold, it is a stressor.
Sure.
So you might have a 6-week period where you're fixing your blood work and you're managing your lifestyle to try to make it to where your cortisol isn't as high as often and it's following your circadian rhythm a little bit better. Probably wouldn't be a good idea to be adding an additional stressor by doing the cold plunge.
Right.
But shoot, like everything is not like a science project, or like, oh, well, this is 2% better than this. Like sometimes it's like, dude, wake up in the morning, go jump in some freezing cold water, sit in there for 3 minutes and do it every day of the week. And you're going to be like this mental monster, just like, oh, like, yeah, I do that in the morning. Like, like that stuff's great. And it's not super harmful. It's kind of hard to overdo compared to like, oh yeah, like I train 15 times a week. Like, oh my God, will you do what? Like, you're not going to hurt yourself by going and doing the cold plunge a couple times.
What are your thoughts on like miracle weight loss drugs, right? Like Ozempic or like whatever, you know, like, do you have an opinion on this crap? I mean, I feel like it gets just shoved down everybody's throat, you know? I mean, just on all the TV commercials and everything like that. What do you think about stuff like that?
Yeah. So like Ozempic, I think it's really cool what it does. I think it does slightly fall into the category of like what we were talking about, like something that's sexy, that gets clicks, that people think this will solve their issue. But you've got to eat well. You've got to exercise. You know what I mean? There's a host of things you need to do before being like, oh, I'm just going to do that. It's going to solve my life. Like in terms of like a practical piece on Ozempic specifically, it's great in terms of rewiring this mechanism of overeating and being hungry all the time, which is like one of the main ways that it works and helps with your insulin sensitivity and whatnot. The issue becomes if you're not eating enough protein and giving the amino acids that help protect and build muscle tissue. Awesome, you lost 40 pounds, but 10 of those pounds were muscle. Okay, now you're messing with your hormones, you're messing with your metabolism, you just decreased your strength and your muscle size, so you're affecting longevity and quality of life. So that's an issue. So if you're getting enough protein in conjunction with using Ozempic, awesome, like that could be amazing. The only other downside I've seen is there can be a slight change in the pleasure and drive chemicals in your brain post Ozempic. Like you're not, I forgot the metric that they were using for it, but
like the dopamine.
Yeah, it would basically be like if I took Ozempic after the fact, it might be a little bit more difficult to be driven to do something. But all of those things can be manipulated. Like you might experience that just from being too stressed and too wired, or by taking Adderall or by taking this or whatever. Like there's a million ways that can happen. Generally speaking, though, if you can use it as a good tool with protein, maintain your muscle mass and get leaner, that's the big rock. You can worry about the other stuff after the fact, like, but it all needs to be done in conjunction with the things that are hard that no one wants to do.
1,000,000%, dude. Like, I mean, you look at like TRT, for example, right? Like the amount of people I've seen say, you know, like there's a lot of people out there that don't understand how the body works and stuff. And they think, oh, if I just take TRT, like if I just get my testosterone to 1,000, I'll just be jacked. Right? It's like, no, you still got to go to the gym. You still got to eat enough protein, right? Like, sure, that might help you, right? If you have a low T. If your testosterone's 250, and you can get it up to 1,000 or 800 or whatever, right? Yeah, 1,000,000%. It's going to be easier to build muscle, correct me if I'm wrong, but it isn't just going to appear on your body.
No.
Because now your testosterone's 800.
Yeah, and there are some studies that show that just implementing TRT can help increase muscle tissue without doing any type of training, just slightly.
Slightly, yeah.
But introducing an exogenous hormone or a treatment like Ozempic or TRT or whatever it is, that's like if we were building a 15-story office, that's like on level 10.
Yeah.
We need to worry about the foundation first. Right? Because if you're introducing this, sure, it might help some of the symptoms a little bit, but you might still have some very big issues that are going to create problems. And some of them, like it sucks, but it might just be a mental thing. Like that very overweight individual might need to figure out why are they having the life experience and the brain and neurochemistry experience that they are. Fix that. It's not like them just leaning out a little bit more. Like they're going to reach some point to where you've hit your ceiling.
You're right.
You lost 20 pounds. You might have put on a couple pounds of muscle, but like you said, like you still got to go to the gym. Like if you're tired all the time and you're kind of like you're not doing your job very well and you're not being the best dad or whoever it is, like that's still going to show. Like there's foundational things that you fix first. It then makes all of the stories above that much easier. And then if you go through step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and your testosterone is still 250, hey man, like that's life.
Now
like,
it's time to talk to a doctor.
Then talk to a doctor, jump on a TRT. But we've had people increase their testosterone scores by over 200 points in a short period of time just from changing their sleep, their nutrition, managing lifestyle. Like you don't have to jump on to TRT.
Totally.
But it's not to say that it's like a bad thing. I just believe that there's steps that should be taken prior.
I couldn't agree more, dude. Yeah, I think that, too many young people probably they just want the shortcut. they see on social media, right? It goes back to what we were talking about a little while ago. Well, Justin, it was an absolute pleasure having you here. I feel like we could talk all day. I want to ask you, how do people get involved with your app, or if they want to be coached or trained by you, like how do they reach out to you? Is there a way that people can like download the app, and like how does that all work?
Yeah, so the standard training app, it's on all the different app stores.
And it's called the Standard Training App.
Yeah,
cool.
and we spelt it special. It's STNDRD, standard.
Okay.
Standard.
Cool.
Yeah,
and we'll link it down below.
Yeah, so the Standard Training App, that's for anyone who just wants to kind of get a taste.
Okay.
They want to see what's different. What is it that Chris Bumstead values and thinks is the best in training and nutrition and whatever it is. Mm-hmm. That's where people can get access to that. And to me, on a lower investment standpoint,
sure.
For coaching with Built Better, we're very specific with who we work with. We're known for creating the most life transformative results, and that takes the right individual being in the right mindset, ready to invest their time, energy, resources into it.
Right.
So we have an application process. Everyone's welcome to apply, and then we go through some calls and some interviews, and we make sure they're a good fit. But we coach people here in Scottsdale at our physical location, and I mean, we've got people in China and Australia and New Zealand. Like we coach all around the world online, which is super cool. Like it's still to me like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like just loving the roller coaster.
Yeah.
But yeah, the application process, and then we can go from there.
That's awesome. Yeah. Maybe I'll have to apply.
Oh, brother, we could do some big things.
I love it, man. Where can people find you on social media?
Yeah. So Justin King Pro is my personal,
cool.
And then Built Better _AZ, and then the standard app. At this point in time, it might still be CBUM Fitness, but it's going to be switched over to standard STNDRD.
Cool. You're the man, dude. I appreciate you being here, brother.
Yes, sir. Thanks again.
Yes, sir. If you're still watching, it's the very end of the podcast. I greatly appreciate you staying to the very end. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't already. Comment down below. Go check out Justin and all the amazing stuff that him and CBUM are working on currently. Appreciate you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.